watching Let's Chat.
Good morning and welcome back. I know you've heard about the controversy surrounding the graphic novel Mouse. Well, a few days ago, we talked with Michael DeZeek, who is the leader of the Jewish Foundation of Chattanooga here, who was very anti any sort of banning having to do with the book. Presenting another side of this, it is a longtime UTC professor of English, Dr. Thomas Balazs. Dr. Balazs, good to see you.
Hi, thank you.
Off the bat, what got you involved in this controversy or interested in this controversy surrounding the book Mouse?
Right, so I was seeing a lot of things showing up on my Facebook feed and in the news. And I have a particular connection to this kind of issue for a lot of reasons. I mean, one, I'm Jewish. My parents were Holocaust survivors, so I'm what's known as a second-generation Holocaust survivor, much like Art Spiegelman.
Right.
3 out of 4 of my grandparents were killed by the Nazis. And I'm a writer, I'm a fiction writer, I'm an English professor, and I've taught Mouse several times at the honors level at the university.
What do you teach when you're getting into a graphic novel like Mouse?
So with Mouse, what I normally teach is I teach it in the context of the history of comics and comic book culture. What was interesting about Mouse is it was like the really first serious, graphic novel for adults that got widespread recognition and won a Pulitzer Prize and dealt with a very, serious topic and kind of legitimized graphic novels in a way that hadn't occurred before. So that's the way I treat it. And it comes out of a tradition of what were called underground comics or alternative comics, sometimes spelled C-O-M-I-X. And those were comics written for adults.
So this raised a flag with you on many different levels then.
Yes.
What was your initial reaction right off the bat when you heard McMinn County wanted to take that book out of their schools?
So my initial reaction, I saw a headline something like, "School Board Bans Mouse on International Holocaust Day." And I was like, wow, those must be some really anti-Semitic school board members who are trying to make some kind of statement about how they hate Jews. And then I thought about it for a second. I was like, oh, that doesn't sound right. I don't see 10 Tennessee board members doing that. And I started to look more deeply into it. And first of all, turned out it had zero to do with International Holocaust Day. It happened like more than 2 weeks before.
Right. It
It was only brought out in the news on International Holocaust Day because they were trying to manipulate, the readers to get clicks. So, and then, I thought about it and even the word bans I didn't like because they're just, they're just removing it from the curriculum. So I thought about it, I thought about Mouse, and I thought about what was in Mouse. And I thought, is that something that I would necessarily want a 7th or 8th grader to be reading? And I have a son who's 13 years old, and he hasn't read Mouse yet. His grandmother was in Auschwitz, and there's a reason he hasn't read it yet, because we didn't think it was time for it.
Didn't think it was age appropriate?
We didn't think it was age appropriate. We didn't think it's age appropriate. And he's known about the Holocaust since he was when you come from my background, you have to make certain decisions about when do you tell your children about what happened to the family. We told him fairly early on, but still we stage in, what he's exposed to and what he's shown and what he's told.
But we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I want to accelerate a little bit.
Yeah.
You were in support of McMinn County removing this book from their library.
I'm not in support of them removing it from the library.
You are not?
I'm in support of them having the choice to remove it. I'm in support of them. I'm in support of the idea that it's a reasonable thing for somebody to do. In other words, that you don't have to be a Nazi or a fascist to decide that a comic book in which shows, the writer's dead mother in a bathtub after slitting her wrists, that maybe this is not appropriate for 14-year-olds.
There are those who would say that if you're going to take this book out of the library, why don't you take out To Kill a Mockingbird and other books of long-standing...
First of all, To Kill a Mockingbird is not illustrated, so usually, so there's a difference between reading and seeing. And the other thing is, it's not my business whether they take To Kill a Mockingbird out of a library in some tiny little county in Tennessee.
Sure.
They know their children better than I know their children. And the idea that people all over the country are outraged because some small little county in Tennessee is making decisions that they think are in the best interest of their children, I think is kind of outrageous. And it's not, and again, Mouse was not written for 8th graders.
Right.
Mouse was written for adults. So it's not that children shouldn't be allowed to read it, but it seems reasonable that you might decide to let them read it when they're older, maybe in high school, maybe after high school. And the idea also that you can't substitute. This idea, people had the idea that they were taking Mouse off the curriculum, and that meant these kids are not going to read any Holocaust literature. They were going to substitute it, so why does it have to be Mouse? Why does it have to be Mouse? If it's not Mouse, then they're authoritarian, Orwellian fascists.
Right.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
Sure.
So why not Anne Frank?
We appreciate your time. I could talk with you about this for hours, and hope you'll come back and we'll revisit this a little bit further down the road.
Sure.
Dr. Tom Balazs, thank you so much for joining us. UTC Professor of English of long-standing, and again, a writer and a second-generation Holocaust survivor as well. Stick around. We'll be right back after this.